Every new car that comes to market has some kind of flaw or fault, a teething problem if you will, that requires attention from the automaker in question before it is resolved. It's one of the reasons we, and most automotive journalists, recommend that you don't buy a new car in its first year of production, unless you're okay dealing with these teething problems. But when a car has been in production for a few years and still has problems, well, then you know the automaker has to act quickly or face damaging its reputation for a very long time. When it's a small problem, like a bug with the infotainment system, it's one thing. But when it's a confirmed fault with the car that poses a fire risk, yeah, it's more troubling. Which is where we are with Hyundai and the Kona EV. First entering into production back in 2017, the 2018 through 2020 Hyundai Kona EV used a lithium-ion battery pack produced for it by LG Energy at a production facility in Nanjing, China. Unless you've been living under a rock, at least in terms of EV-related news, you'll know that over the past few years there's been several examples of Kona EVs catching fire. Initially, cars that were catching fire appeared to be ones undergoing charging or with recently charged battery packs, and Hyundai announced a software update for all Kona EVs that appeared to restrict the car's maximum charge rate at a rapid charging station, as well as limit its maximum state of charge. That update, Hyundai implied, would solve the problem, although many Kona owners, including our very own Winter Tashlin, were unhappy with Hyundai's attitude to the problem. Winter reports from his discussions with Hyundai's customer service that the company intended the software update to be a permanent fix, albeit a fix that some owners then reported as seeming to reduce the car's real-world range and rapid charging speed. And it was that problem, and Hyundai's attitude to it, that caused Winter to use his local lemon lords to request a buyback of his car. That software update didn't solve the problem. New reports of Kona EVs catching fire, including cars who had reportedly had the new software updates applied, meant that Hyundai was forced to rethink its position. Further investigation of the battery packs led to the discovery that cells within the packs were incorrectly assembled by LG Energy at the factory, thanks to a manufacturing defect and a misalignment of layers within the cells that caused structural flaws that ultimately led to the fires. So in February this year, Hyundai, in collaboration with LG Energy, announced a global recall of every single Kona EV made to that point, as well as a recall of an electric bus made for the domestic Korean market that happened to share its battery pack with the Kona EV. The two firms, they promised, would replace every pack with new ones at no cost to the owners under full warranty. When we covered that news story back in February, we said it was the most expensive electric car recall in history, but still the right move. Except now it's June. And while Hyundai promised this global recall would happen, we've yet to encounter anyone who's actually had the recall work carried out. Moreover, as Inside EVs reported earlier today, there have now been 2 new suspected battery fires involving Hyundai Kona EVs. One in Oslo, Norway on Monday, and one earlier this morning in Korea. Both cases appear to be vehicles that were not charging at the time of the fire, indicating yet again a battery issue is potentially to blame. It's not clear, of course, at this stage if the cars had received a software update to limit the charge speed and maximum state of charge. I should also note, for full clarity, that we have reached out to Hyundai for a statement, but at the time of filming this, have not received a response. If we get one, we'll be sure to add it in the description below. And to be clear, these 2 instances of fires may be completely unrelated. They may be battery fires caused by non-battery related issues. After all, we've experienced extreme temperatures in much of the Northern Hemisphere in recent weeks, and it's possible there's another reason that both of these fires occurred, be it something inside the cars catching fire or something near to the cars catching fire. I am not making excuses, but frankly we won't know for sure what started the fires until an official report is published for both vehicles. Right now though, if we use our preferred method, Occam's razor, doesn't look good. If you watch this channel regularly, you'll know that we try and be as fair and as impartial as possible in our coverage of the world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation. But when presented with such evidence of ongoing potential battery problems with the Kona EV and all but radio silence on the promised battery replacement program, something that was announced 5 months ago tomorrow, we need to take a different approach. But before we do, it is important to note that we loved the Kona EV when it first came out. Our initial coverage of the car called out other automakers, saying that they should be worried about the Kona EV as a real threat in a market growing more competitive. Obviously, at that point, we didn't know about the battery defect or fires, but then no one did. We all still think that the Kona is a great EV as designed. Our own Kate Walton-Elliott drives its sibling, the Kia e-Niro, but that has batteries made by SK Innovations and so far hasn't had any issues. And while Winter doesn't regret getting rid of his Kona EV, he still thinks it was a fantastic car. That said, when we think there is now irrefutable evidence that the Kona EV is seriously flawed, and right now, even with battery management updates for Hyundai rolled out, we think it poses a significant risk to the public. And given the fact that the Kona EV has now ceased sales in some markets, Hyundai is focusing on bringing the Ioniq 5 to market, I think Hyundai is more than aware that this problem is proving more difficult to solve than it may have first thought. And to that end, we think if these fires do in fact turn out to be caused by the same defect as previous ones, now is the time for Hyundai to not only cease sales of all Kona EVs worldwide, new and used, but to inform the US National Traffic Safety Administration and sibling agencies around the world that customers should not drive or use their cars until their vehicle has a new, proven safe battery pack installed. Had Hyundai not dragged its corporate feet with its announced battery recall program, I doubt that we would be having this conversation, but frankly, until the cause of these two latest fires are determined, we think it's only prudent, given the overwhelming evidence currently on display, for those with Kona EVs to stop using them. Does this mean the Kona EV is a bad car? No, it's still a good car when working correctly. But when a fuel pump leak with many of BMW's models a few years ago led to the automaker issuing a warning that fuel could leak, igniting on a hot engine bay or an electrical short, the automaker recommended customers not drive their car and call their dealership to have their car safely transported to their dealership for remedial work. What we are advocating for is exactly the same thing. It would be a very prudent safety measure that would, I'm sure, restore a lot of faith in the brand among Kona EV owners. Which brings me to the matter of the Chevrolet Bolt EV and its eerily similar recall involving the LG Energy supplied battery packs in its 2017 through 2019 model year cars. As I've said several times, I would much rather that Chevrolet had offered a battery replacement for affected cars, especially after a Bolt EV that had a temporary software fix applied spectacularly caught fire in Virginia earlier this year. However, since General Motors rolled out a second software update, a permanent fix, one that it said that would solve the issue by using more advanced battery monitoring subroutines that could spot a potential problem and notify owners long before any fires occurred, we have heard of no reported cases of Bolt EVs spontaneously catching fire. If that were not the case, or at some point in the future that fact changes, involving cars that had had that permanent fix, I would be the first to say the same thing about the Bolt EV that I am now saying about the Kona EV. Do you have a Kona EV? Do you feel safe driving it? Are you worried about Hyundai's EV reputation moving forwards? And would you buy a Hyundai EV after this? Let us know below. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.